Hello, hello. Welcome to tea time. I am a day late and life's been busy, as it often is. I am in town taking a rare office day, so I don't have any horses behind me. But I wanted to stay consistent and do tea time, even if some of you may watch it at a later date. Here I am. So, what are we talking about today? I thought today I would talk about the importance of letting things be the way they are. So this is an interesting thing to think about because in horse training, we're always trying to change our horses. We're always trying to get them to be better than they were. We're trying to train ourselves become better than we were. And I think that for the most part, that's what life is about, is learning to enjoy life more, learning to enjoy our relationships more, enjoy our horses more. And this constant striving for change, for improvement, can sometimes become very wearing for everybody involved. So when do we just let it be? When do we let our horses be good enough? When do we let ourselves be good enough? For any of you who watch me frequently, I often talk about the 80-20 rule. I find it can be applied so many places in life, but this is one of them. If we can spend 80% of the time letting things be as they are, this is good enough. This is sufficient. This is lovely. If 80% of the time we can focus on the things that are good enough, and then 20% of the time focus on what needs to be improved. How do I improve it? What action do I take, or what pressure do I use to improve something? Now, a lot of people are going to feel discontent with that. And maybe you need to take it up to 50-50. 50% of the time you're striving, you're taking action, you're making things better. 50% of the time you have some gratitude about it. What I find is that if you get over that 20% mark, where more than 20% of the time you're trying to change or fix or develop your horse, you're going to need extrinsic motivators. You're going to need more pressure. And that comes with changing yourself too, I think. A lot of us are driven by something external to ourselves. We could get pretty deep on that subject, but an external motivator is something outside of yourself that motivates you to be different. And what I want to study is the intrinsic motivators. What makes us want to be better, do better, evolve? I find that about 20% of the time we can do that. We can lean on those intrinsic motivators. But once you get over that 20% mark, you're going to have to start reaching for more extrinsic motivators. So with horses, that's where a lot of people turn to food rewards. That's where a lot of people turn to bridles, to halters, to round pens, to flags. Those are your, I want change more than 20% of our relationship, or more than 20% of our time together. And that's fine. That's valid. I want to see how much I can value the relationship as it is, at least 80% of the time. And then 20% time, look for change. Now, this week I've been challenged. I've been integrating for the last couple of weeks new horses into my herd. My stallion got along great with everyone at the beginning. Then a couple of the teenage boys crossed the line and got a little bit too strong. And then he got real hard on them. And that was really hard for me. I just wanted everybody to get along. Now, he was never overtly dangerous. The only thing at danger perhaps was my fences. So, I have the occasional one line of hot wire across a spot that I don't want anybody going through. But when you've got a stallion and a couple of colts working things out, that one line of hot wire starts looking like not enough of a fence. So this has been a challenge for me. When do I leave it alone? When do I interfere? When do I separate them? When do I move them around? When do I help them change focus? And there's a lot of me that wants to fix it yesterday. I want to make it better now. And it's been really, really challenging for me to find that 80-20 balance and really help them in a way where 80% of the time I'm saying, good job, guys. You're doing beautifully. I'm so impressed with you. Look at your great decisions. If I can acknowledge how well they're doing 80% of the time, and then use some action or some pressure or some sort of manipulation of the situation to help them do better 20% of the time, that's where intrinsic motivation really works. If I'm getting over that 20% mark, I'm gonna need more extrinsic motivation. Do I use a flag? Do I use a stick? Do I push them up against some solid fences to get them to make the right choice? That's not wrong or bad, but I've really struggled with it the last 10 days, 2 weeks, because I want it to get better faster. And I have to admit, this morning was the very first morning I let myself sleep in and I didn't go check on them at dawn. This was the very first morning I thought, yeah, they're doing well enough. I don't even need to go check. And my daughter checked on them a few hours later. She said, yep, they're just fine. Now, it's not perfect. Ari is reverting back to some of his behaviors from a couple of years ago where he's sort of separating from the herd and just going off by himself. Like he doesn't want to talk to anybody. This is not abnormal for him. He was like that for a lot of years. But it's something I would love to change. I would love to bring back his social self that was before I integrated the new horses into the herd. And I will. But thinking about letting him be who he is, if he needs to take a little time and go stand behind the copse of trees and not be near the other horses, and he can make that choice for himself, maybe I just let him be who he is and appreciate him for making a good choice for himself, where he's not irritated by the new teenage boy horses' behaviors. And he can remove himself from the situation instead of hyper-correcting them. So on the one hand, I wish he was just a little bit more adaptable. And on the other hand, I understand he demands a certain amount of order in his herd. And he really, really hates it when the more submissive members of the herd get threatened in any way. So he gets a little hyper protective of the more submissive members of the herd. I get it. I just wish he was a little softer about everything. And then I have to remember that will happen over time. Is it good enough to spend 80% of the time commending him on all of his great choices, recognizing him, affirming him, telling him what a great job he's doing as the only stallion in the band, at least 80% of our interactions? 20% of the interactions, can I help him change focus a little different, look at things a little different, yield his forehand a little bit better, help him with the kinds of things that will give him a little bit more patience with his herd members? Yeah, I can do that. This conversation is a bit of a pep talk for myself, because I think in the last couple of weeks, I've been so determined to make things better that I've been desperately sort of trying to figure out how to speed up the process of herd integration. And maybe it's good enough. Maybe I can take a deep breath now and really sink back into my 80-20 and think, can I tell Ari what a great job he's doing bringing the new horses into the herd 80% of our interactions? 20% of our interactions, can I help him do better? So that's my goal. I'm only home for another week, and then I head off to Germany and Portugal for clinics. So before I leave on a trip, I really try to lean into what I call self-regulation training. So co-regulation training is where you really help the horse find answers to things. Self-regulation training is where you really try and recognize and acknowledge the horse for all of the good ideas they have that you didn't help them with. They came up with all on their own. And so for the week before I leave, this is something I really lean into. I know that I'm going to be away for a while. How many positive, good decisions that my horses make can I acknowledge, point out, respond to, show them I see, so that when I'm gone, they're in the habit of making really good decisions for themselves. So Tracy says, I missed the very beginning, but I really respect that you're talking about them being and accepting them for who they are as individuals. I always abide by the 80% rule. It allows some flexibility. Yeah. So letting them be who they are. My stallion is going to be a little overprotective. It's part of his nature to protect the weaker members of the herd. If he comes on a little strong, I'm going to feel like, oh, could you just relax a little bit? That's a bit much. But he is who he is. And I'm going to have to accept that to some extent. And then 20% of the time, I'll see if maybe he can stretch and just soften up that intensity of his personality. So when do you just let things be? 80% of the time. That's my answer. And 20% of the time, see if you can gently help them stretch. Or if you really want to lean into that co-regulation, you can put a bit more pressure onto them. Or if you really want to lean into your extrinsic motivators, you can make it more than 20% of the time. But yeah, here's to the 80-20 rule and letting horses be who they are, appreciating them for who they are, and then just a little bit shaping them into the better version of themselves. I hope that's helpful. I will be here for another week, so I'll do Tuesday tea time from home next week, and then I will be in Germany the following week. Thank you guys for joining me. Have a wonderful day wherever you are, and we'll be on the correct Tuesday time for tea next week.